I lead the agroecology program of the Henish World Foundation and also coordinate the initiative. As a symposium that we're having here in Kisumu, we are looking at the aspects of policies that have nurtured the path towards safe use of farm inputs that exclude the dependency on the highly hazardous pesticides. We're also looking at the politics of pesticide. You know, the divide between the industry and the farmers, who are the main consumers of these products, whereby we would like to see how can we nurture the transition from dependence on the highly hazardous pesticide to alternatives that are safer for our farmers.
Situation is a product of research. A lot of researches are still going on the issues of pesticides. You know that our own Kenyan government in the recent, I think in the last few months, abolished the use of various pesticides. But we are also aware, even from the proceedings of this conference or this workshop, that there are a number of pesticides that have been outlawed in the EU, but which are still being used in this country, meaning that our consumers and the wider public in Kenya and perhaps in several other parts of Africa are exposed to highly hazardous pesticides.
This is Elizabeth Achimopolo. I work with an organization called Greenpeace Africa. So we do a lot of advocacy, environmental advocacy work in the continent. And in Kenya, we've been working on issues of seed sovereignty and now also the issue of HHPs. The reason why we are here today is because we continuously see advocacy coming out on issues of toxic pesticides, the HHPs, when it comes to human health, but there's less advocacy and research and work coming out from the environmental impacts of these HHPs. It's because we find that most environmental impacts are quite slow. They don't create that need for action. You feel like you don't need to act immediately, but they're slowly killing the planet. So we are saying, how are we going to be able to produce food in a dying planet? We need to find a way of making sure that we are producing food, but at the same time we are taking care of our environment. So Greenpeace Africa has a campaign called Food for Poison, and with the Food for Poison campaign, what we are asking is, are we really eating food that is nourishing us and our planet, or are we poisoning ourselves and at the same time poisoning our environment?
Our concern is if we have all this information that have been shared by our scientists, and we are just having a deaf eye, what do we do about it? Because for us, we are very much concerned about our health. It has been a case that we know that there are so many diseases that have been impacted on us because of chemicals, and that's why we have brought some farmers here and even some of our representatives from the civil society organizations, so that they can share with the rest of the team here on the implications of toxics and how we are producing, how we are doing it by producing biofertilizer, because we cannot also talk about what is not happening as well as we don't have done this.
We have come up with several challenges that are cut across from policies and regulatory frameworks that support alternatives to dependency on highly hazardous pesticides. We have also been able to identify the key challenges that different actors within the chain are facing to be able to transit towards agroecology as a safer farming practice that we can depend on. Some of these key issues are the lack of key policies that are supporting agroecology in particular. And also we are being challenged by the dependence on conventional agriculture based on our training background, both students, both farmers, and also our extension workers, whereby there's increasing doubt on the efficacy of bio-inputs or biopesticides vis-a-vis the highly hazardous pesticide. And one of the issues that we are realizing is that we need to make these products available in terms of accessibility to our farmers, also affordability, because what we are saying is that at the end of it all, if we are not depending on the expensive inputs, we'll be able to transit to less expensive practices that at the end of the day are going to save money to our farmers.
that are being used currently here, which are abolished in Europe and other developing nations. So one can say that if you tell me how serious it is, I think the problem is still quite significant because levels of awareness and also research output to inform policy is still very limited in our context.
We felt the need to come here because we have a report that will be launching the second week of December, and it's looking at the policy gaps when it comes to monitoring, when it comes to the policies that we have in Africa. So we have 3 countries that we are going to be reporting on in this report. So it's Kenya, South Africa, and Ghana. And the reason we did that is because we wanted to get that continental data of what the situation is when you talk about environmental impacts of pesticides. So we took Kenya, for example, because of also the advocacy work that has gone in Kenya, and we want to use that as a foundation for making sure that we shift from producing food that way in the region, in East Africa, and see what are some of the lessons we can learn, what are some of the things that are already working in Kenya that you can be able to implement in these other countries. So that's why we are here. We have been able to bring farmers, researchers, and also the universities to see that can we be able to work on evidence, can we be able to look at what are some of these gaps in data that we need so that we can get that policy shift that we are talking about.
This workshop is a product of our collaboration with the University of Oslo in Norway, and it's a 6-year project that we started in 2021, funded by Norwegian, that is NORAD. This project is a collaboration between, as I've already mentioned, University of Oslo in Sweden, Maseno University here in Kenya, University of Nairobi here in Kenya, Kenya Medical Research Institute also here in Kenya, and then we have University of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, as well as National Medical Research Institute, that is NIMRI in Tanzania, and then Makerere University is also part of our collaborators. So it involves several research institutions and universities in East Africa. And the main purpose of this project, this 6-year project, is to enhance training and research in medical and environmental anthropology for the 21st century in East Africa. So the project involves a lot of, apart from this conference that we are seeing here, we have had several students in the 3 East African countries being trained here in Kenya, that is at the University of Nairobi, and also in Maseno, and partly also being trained at the University of Oslo in various topics on environmental and medical anthropology. So this conference today is one of the lined-up activities for the project, and specifically on environmental issues. This workshop or this symposium today is about pesticides, environment, and health. And here, the main discussions, the main themes that are going on here, being discussed here, how actually the use of pesticides affect soil health, how the use of pesticides also affects safety of food, and eventually how use of pesticides affect human health, particularly those of us who consume food emanating from or produced through the use of pesticides. So the current discussions are about that. We are trying to, there are several organizations that are involved in these discussions, several institutions, some in Europe and others in East Africa. So we have participants coming from different parts of the world, in Europe, and also in various parts of East African region. And of course, we also have farmer representatives, the advocates of consumers, consumer organizations, as well as researchers from various institutions across the world gathered here today.
Recently, I think we all saw that the Minister of Kenya, the CS, announced that we are going to be banning a number of pesticides in the country. But the sad thing about that is we still have some of these HHPs still being allowed to be used in greenhouses, and also in some areas where we're talking about, for example, termites control. And the problem we are saying, that's why we are bringing in the environmental angle to say we are banning these pesticides, looking at the health impact, but are we really looking at the environmental side of things? So if we are saying that we are not going to allow farmers to use these on food crops, but we're still allowing them to be used in the environment, it means we are still going to have these toxic pesticides in our water, in our soil, and at the end of the day we'll find them in our body. So when we release the report, it's going to talk about all these pesticides that are still an issue, that are still being used in the country. There's also the element of implementation. So we said that we ban, but are these pesticides really not in the market? Right now when you go in the market, most of the agro shops, when you go there, you find that they still sell this thing. They are not put on the labels, on the shelves. But when you ask for them, you get them. So we want to make sure that we put more work when it comes to implementation, because saying that we're going to ban is one thing, but really implementing that and making sure that we don't continue to poison our kids, to poison our moms, our dads, we really have to go into implementation. So once the report is out, we'll be able to see how we've been able to look at what are also some of the gaps. For example, we talk about monitoring. You find that the pollution that is happening in our water and our soil, there's less monitoring that is happening to pollinators. There's less monitoring. So what are some of these gaps? What are some of these recommendations that are going to go into that? So, and all this is going to be part of the report, and it's also going to come from the symposium. And that's why we have to come together and see, are there alternatives? Because people are also asking that you are saying no to ABCD, but are there alternatives for farmers? And yes, we know that there are alternatives. We know that agroecology works. We've seen it work in Kenya. So the question is how do we come together and scale that? Because there's also that issue of food security. We are saying pesticides are helping us produce better. Our crops are not dying from pesticides, so from pests. So how do we make sure that we can shift and